What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to my channel once again. So today we're going to be taking a look at the Monport GA100. Now, in a previous video, I did test out the GI60, which is very similar to this, but there are a few differences. Now, I was going to go ahead and do an unboxing on the table, but this did come in a big, large wooden crate that was really heavy, so I just couldn't fit that on the table. So I just took it out, placed it on the table, and this is exactly pretty much how it came. Now, this machine is using the 100-watt JPT MOPA fiber laser. It does come with the ruler, the machine itself, the power cords, the USB cord, the goggles, some little tie downs for their material pieces, the Allen wrenches, some screws, and everything like that. But I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get this all put together, which is basically just pretty much one or two steps. I just need to lift this upright, bolt it down, and then just plug in the cords. So I'll go ahead and I'll do that, and we'll be right back. So here on the back of the machine, you can see where the USB cable goes, and it is recessed a little bit. So you will kind of have to just lean down a little bit to see how it goes in. And right next to it is the power cord and the on-off switch. And underneath right here is a spot for the rotary attachment if you have one, but I don't, so I won't be using that port. So there you have it. This only took about 1 minute to get set up, just a few bolts and plug in the cords. All that's left now to do is hook this up to my computer and try it out. Now, this laser does come with a 175mm lens, and it does feature an autofocus as well. And all the software and files you're going to need is on the USB drive that did come with the machine. Now, I won't be using EZCad that it does come with. I will be using Lightburn since I am much more familiar with that, and that is what I prefer to use. So I'll be using Lightburn for these tests. Now, Lightburn isn't free, but you do get a 30-day free trial if you'd like to test it out before using it. But if you don't want to use that and you prefer to use EZCad, that is completely free and definitely acceptable to use if you don't want to pay for Lightburn. And now, before I get this hooked up, these little screws that it came with to use for the tie downs for any material you might be testing, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to put these in some slots on the side just to make sure I don't lose these. Now, they did come in a little plastic packaging, but I tend to lose that, so I figured if I just keep it with the machine and just lightly screw them in, that way I won't lose them. Now, one thing I really like about this machine is that right on the side it does have a calibration line that shows the distance between the engraving plane and the calibration line for what your material is that you're testing. And also on the side over here, it does have all the specs that you're going to need, which includes the focal length, the offset, the scale, trapezoid, things like that. So if you need to adjust anything, and when you set this up in Lightburn, you already have all these numbers right here figured out, so you don't need to manually do anything. Now, keep in mind, though, that if you do swap out the lenses, you will probably need to adjust some of these values because your lens will probably have a different focal length. If you're using, let's say, 110 instead of the 175, you definitely will need to run some tests and make those adjustments. So now I'll just get this hooked up to my computer and we'll try some tests. And usually always the first test I try and run is just a power scale test to kind of see what kind of different markings it's going to leave, whether I'm doing 10% power or 100% power, or a speed of maybe 200 millimeters all the way up to maybe 4,000 millimeters. So I'll go ahead, I'll get this set up, and then we'll go from there. So I got this all hooked up to my computer. All that's left to do now is just remove the lens cap. I'll just place it on top, and I can just power it on. Make sure I hit the switch in the back. And I'll hit the power button down on the bottom right. Now, one thing I really do like about this machine is the autofocus. You can see the little dot right here. If you can't, there you go, you can see it a little bit better. But this will just give you an autofocus. So I'm going to test this material out first with just a power test. So I can just place this down and I can hit the autofocus button. And it will automatically focus it to where I need it to be. So right there is the optimal distance on where it should be set. Now there is also this little button right here you can push. And you can see right here that normally it would be 2 dots, but since it's overlapping, that is the prime spot of where it should be focused. Now for any reason, if you do need to adjust that and it isn't set properly, there are 2 little screws right up underneath. As you can see, if I need to adjust it, I can just adjust these 2 screws until they're overlapping once I actually do have this in focus. And one more thing I will mention before I continue is that if you do swap out the lens and you change it out for a different one, your autofocus will need to be adjusted. And in order to do that, you just need to manually focus it first using the up and down buttons. And then once you have it properly set, if you just push and hold the focus button and the down button, the light will then blink 3 times, and then you should be all set. You can raise it back up and then hit the focus again to test it to make sure it's working. But it's very simple to get that reset for the autofocus, just in case you do happen to swap it out, or if for whatever reason it does get out of focus. So I will use these little tie downs just to hold the piece in place, just so it doesn't move around, or if the power gets too high. This is just really thin aluminum, so it can warp if I do have the power too high. So I'll just use these little tie downs and just kind of tie it down a little bit just to keep it in place. So now I'll head over to the computer, open up Lightburn, and we'll run a little power test, and let's try this out. Okay, so here we are over in Lightburn, and in order to get your machine set up, all you need to do is go over into Devices. As you can see, I already have mine set up. But you can just go into Create Manually, or Find My Laser once you have it plugged in. Either one will work just fine. I'll click on the JCZ fiber, I'll click Next. Now I'm not going to go through all these steps because I've already done it, but you're just going to want to import the config file that's on your computer. And once you go through that, you can just keep clicking Next and then set up the size, and you're all pretty much set. Now, if you do need to adjust your settings at all, you can go into Edit and go into Device Settings. And as I showed earlier on the side of the machine, it does have the bulge, skewed, trapezoid, and your scale already set up. So all you'll need to do is input those numbers. So I'll just go ahead, I'll click OK. And now for this first test, I am just going to run a power test. So I'll click on Laser Tools, I'll click on Material Test. And for this one, I'm just going to go from, let's do 500 millimeters per second for the minimum. The max, I'll do 4,000. The power 10% up to 100%. And actually I'll change this to 8 so we're in even increments. I can click on Preview, and here I can see what it's going to do. Frequency 75 kilohertz. Q pulse is 200. That all looks okay. Let me just check the material settings. Speed 4,000, max power 100, frequency 75. My line interval, I will just set at 0.05, so it's not too low, so it doesn't take longer than it should. I just kind of want a quick test to see what it does. Text settings, speed of 2,000, max power of 40. That should be fine to show up all the lines and everything. Since this is 100 watts, I shouldn't have a problem with that. And this is aluminum. Frequency, yes, I'll keep that at 75, 200, and we'll just do 1 pass. So now I can go ahead, I can frame this on the machine. We'll see how it's going to look. And I might actually just adjust this a little bit on there, the material, just so it's not kind of right in the middle. I'll just move it off to the side a little bit. So I'll do that, and then we'll go ahead, we'll hit start and see how this works. So as you can see, I did adjust this a little bit just so I have it all framed in the upper left-hand corner. This way I have more space to run other tests on this material if I want to. So let's go ahead and hit start, and let's see how this turns out. Okay, so that has finished. I'll go ahead. I'm just gonna unloosen the brackets so I can remove this, take a look at it. And here you can see how it actually turned out. So here we can see a little bit better at the power all the way at 100% power at 500. You can see how dark it is and then as it gradually loses power, you can see how light it is over here. Now, it's always a good idea to run a few different tests and changing a few different variables just to see what kind of different effects you will get. For instance, I might change the frequency from 75, I might drop it down to 45 and run the same exact test on here. Or I may try and adjust some of the speeds a little bit or the power a little bit, along with like the Q pulse I might change as a variable on one of these. So I'll probably do a few more different tests just so you can kind of see what the difference is. So I'll get that set up, we'll run those tests, and then we'll be right back after that. All right, so I ran 3 more tests, just changing the variables just slightly on each one. And as you can see on the second one, I ran the frequency at 40 kilohertz compared to the 75 on the first one. This third one down here on the bottom left, I changed it to 100 frequency. And on the bottom right, I changed the frequency to 120 kilohertz, or I'm sorry, 130 kilohertz. And the Q pulse I actually changed to 100 nanoseconds instead of 200 that I had on the other 3. So yes, it's definitely always a good idea to run some tests on any materials before you go engraving them, just to see what kind of markings you're going to get. So they did supply some of these little black business cards, aluminum ones, to test out as well with it. So we're going to try this out just to see how we can kind of cut through this. And these are, I think, 0.1 millimeters. Yep, so these are 0.1. So we'll run some tests on this and kind of see what it takes to get this to cut through and go from there. Okay, so let's do that. So since I don't want the laser to actually cut through the material and then engrave onto the machine, I will just put down this scrap piece that I have, which is actually from a previous machine that I tested out. So I'll just use that. That way, once it cuts through, it just goes onto this surface, which is basically just a scratch piece that it doesn't matter what happens to it. So I'll place the piece on there and let's get this set up. So as you can see, these 2 dots, I'm not sure if you can see, let me zoom in. But these 2 dots aren't actually aligned, so I will have to re-autofocus this. So to do that, I can just place it under this front dot, and I'll hit focus. And I'll let it re-autofocus to now to this height. And now as you can see, when I place it back under there, there is only 1 dot now. So since there really isn't a good way to have this tied down, I'm just going to use the clamps and just kind of set it on it just to hold it in place, which hopefully that should be just fine. So back over in Lightburn, I'm just going to draw a square on here. Doesn't really need to be perfect, I don't think. And I just want to do an outline for this, so I'm just going to change this to line mode. And I will just click on P to center it. And as far as the settings go, I want to see how quickly we can cut through this. So I'm going to set this to 100% power. And I'm just going to, I'll change the speed. Let's go to 200 and let's see how well that does cutting it out. I'll keep the frequency at 75 and the Q pulse at 200 since that's basically the peak of where I'm going to get the most power coming from this laser. So I'll click OK. And running it at this speed and this power, I'm not sure if this will cut through it, but that's what I want to find out. So I'll click OK. I'll get this all framed up, and we'll see how well this cuts. All right, so that happened very quickly. Let's see if it did anything. I don't think it did. Oh, wait, actually. It did. It popped it right out. All right, so I did not think that would actually cut through it that quickly, but as you can see, it did. It didn't warp it at all. And so at 200 millimeters per second with a frequency of 75 and a Q pulse of 200, that doesn't look like it had any problem cutting it out. It basically popped right on out of there. So I'll try that again just to see if I can make that go a little bit quicker. So I'll jump this up to maybe, let's try 300 and 500. And we'll see if that will be able to cut it out still as well. So I have these both set up. On the left, we do have 300 millimeters per second, and on the right one, it is set to 500 millimeters per second. So I'll hit start, and let's see if these will cut through. So let's take a look. This one was the 300, and that still cut it out. This one is the 500, and nope, that didn't cut it out. That's still stuck in there. You can kind of see the outline, but that's more of just an indentation of where it kind of went. So 300 might be the best. I can try one more time at 400 just to see what happens if it does cut it out. So let's try that. And let's see if that one went through. And it did not. You can see that it started again to make a little mark through, but not quite. So I think it's safe to say that 300 is probably the quickest I can go to get it cut for this 0.1 millimeter aluminum sheet. So now that I have an idea of how much power this machine actually puts out, I'm going to run some other tests, which I'll just kind of do that off camera so I don't sit here and bore you going through every single thing one at a time. So I'll do that, and then we'll come back right after that. All right, so I went ahead and I ran a bunch more tests, but before I get into that, I do want to mention that I did have a little accident and I hurt my eye on this machine. But before you're thinking, oh my God, he wasn't wearing his safety goggles, no, it wasn't due to the laser. It was because I hit my head on my lamp, or on my light that's above the machine, and because of that, it came down and hit the top of the machine and gouged my eye out. So I was kind of out and blind for about a week and a half. But it's all better now for the most part. Still a little blurry, but not so bad. So now I'll show you some of the results I got. And one of my first tests was on this piece of slate. And I think this turned out really good. I think it could have been a little bit better, and I think I could have tweaked some of the settings just to get this a little bit brighter. But overall, I'm quite happy with it. I did one of my steel coins from one of my models that I designed up and created a height map from. As you can see, this is steel, this is a magnet, and it sticks right to it. Now, if you are using brass coins, you will get deeper results because it is a softer material, obviously, but for steel, I think that's pretty good. And I probably could adjust some of the passes and make it even deeper, but overall, I'm quite happy with it. Next, I tried doing some deep engraving on aluminum, and as you can see, this is much deeper than the steel coin did, and this is significantly less passes. And I actually put the text in here. You probably can't see it, but I'll see if I can get a picture and zoom in a little bit better on what the results were. But I just basically tweaked them just a little bit to see the different results. Now, I do like this one with that kind of different finish on it, not nice and smooth like this one is. But I kind of like that. I kind of gave it a different look to it. So once I did that, I engraved this one, which was a deep engraving too. Not real deep. I only did 32 passes on this, but overall, I think it came out great. I did, after I ran the entire thing, I went over just the background to get a nice white color on it, and then on top of it to get a dark black color. I then wanted to try some stainless steel and get some colors. and I ran a whole bunch of tests, and I spent about 3 or 4 days just running tests on this to try and get different colors. And as you can see, I have a whole bunch. And there's even more. I think this one turned out really good. I think this kind of gave me the broadest range of colors. But I think I was able to get some good ones with those. And then I did this image of Homer, and I think that turned out great. So what are my thoughts about this machine? The 100 watts, I think this is just crazy powerful. I was able to get some super dark engravings and super deep engravings on these, on aluminum, even on steel. And it did cut through the aluminum just fine with one pass at, I think, 300 millimeters per second. At 100% power, it cut through it basically like butter. The other ones, once I got a little bit higher speeds, didn't do it, but at 200 millimeters a second, this literally only took, I think, 1 second to cut through it, so that's really good. I do really like the fact that all you have to do to focus this is just hit the focus button. It's that simple. You just line up your piece underneath this red dot, hit the focus button, it'll automatically do it for you. So when you're just switching to different materials, instead of having to manually adjust it or to hold down a button, you just click the focus and you're all set to go. This does come with the 175 millimeter lens, and if you do want to swap this out, you can for a smaller lens, but keep in mind you will have to adjust the autofocus if you want to continue to use it, and the 2 little red dot alignment beams underneath, you'll have to refocus those and loosen them and tighten them just to get that back in focus. And you'll also have to adjust the skew and the trapezoid and the scale that are written on the side of the machine if you swap out the lens as well. One thing I really like about this machine too is that if you're using something or you're trying to engrave something that isn't going to fit underneath the machine, these 4 screws, if you just loosen them up, this entire machine will swivel, and then you can engrave off the end of it. So if you're engraving something that's really tall that's not going to fit on here, you can turn it, place it underneath, hit the engraving, you could swivel it back, and then just retighten up the bolts, and you're set to go again. This machine does come with everything you're going to need right off the bat. It does come with the flash drive that has all the programs on it that you're going to need. The configuration file is all written on the side of it for the scale and everything that you're going to need as well if you don't have the core figure to put in, especially if you're using Lightburn. I use Lightburn, but it does come with EZCad too. And I'm not a huge fan of it. I think it's just more complicated to use, and I'm so used to using Lightburn, I just stick with that. But this is compatible with both if you want to use either one. I do want to point out that I would recommend cleaning your lens after every use. I'm using this Zeiss or Zeiss, however you want to pronounce it, to clean my lens, and I clean this daily, and I just use these little microfiber pieces of cloth that are lint-free just to make sure you don't get any scratches on it. But this stuff works great. I will put a link in the description on where you can pick this up. This is available off of Amazon, and I think I paid like $9 for it, and I actually got 2 bottles for it. So this stuff will pretty much last eternity for 2 bottles of this. Like 1 squirt is all you pretty much need. Now, if you're looking to download any of the height maps that I used for any of my coins, I always post mine on 3dgrayscale.com, so you can check out that site and see all the files that I post up, along with all the other ones from other people. And if you create your own, feel free to share it on there as well, and maybe I'll check it out and I'll test it and see how it turns out. But yeah, if you want to download these, I will put a link as well in the description on where you can get these from. So would I recommend this machine? 100% yes, I recommend it. I think it's just absolutely fantastic. The things you can do with it, the fact that it has autofocus, the fact that you can move this around if you need to adjust where you're cutting and engraving, I think it's just awesome. You can do some super deep engravings, whether it's steel, whether it's aluminum, whether it's slate, with rock, anything like that. It's just fantastic. Now, to decide if this is the right one for you compared to like a 60 watt or a 30 watt or 50 watt or anything like that, if you're looking to do some deep engravings, I would recommend going with the 100 watt. But if you're just looking to do some, color engravings on stainless steel, or just some images or little things like that, and you're not looking to go real deep, you would be just fine picking up the 60 watt or the 50 watt or something like that. But if you want the power, you want the speed, and if down the road you're going to want to be doing some things that are deep engraving, I would definitely recommend going with the 100 watt compared to a lower wattage machine. So if you are in the market and looking to pick up one of these machines, I will put a link down in the description on where you can pick this up as well. And I will actually link to the 60 watt that I reviewed a while back. So just click up here if you want to check that one out before purchasing, so you can kind of see maybe some of the differences. But either one, both machines are fantastic. I do recommend Monport. They are great machines. They will last you a long time. Now, I have heard some people complain about their customer service and that it's just not very good. I haven't had that problem personally. Every time I've contacted them, they've responded fairly quickly. Now they are on a different time zone, so keep that in mind, that if you're contacting them at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they might not even get to it until around midnight, since they are based in China. So do keep that in mind, that you will get a response back. It just might not be as quickly as you want. But to me, their customer service has been really good, and they have helped me with every problem that I've ever had on these machines. Well, that's going to be it for this video, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed it. And if you did, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, ring the bell, get notified of all the new videos that come out. And as always, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.